What's going on, everybody? It's officially day one of the newest season, season 6.5 of Marvel Rivals, and we've got a lot of new content to explore. Today, we've got our newest duelist, Elsa Bloodstone, and to be honest, I really didn't know all too much about her character, and I really didn't know what to think when we saw that she was paired up with Deadpool. I thought she'd be easily overshadowed just because Deadpool is a more popular character, but I was actually really wrong. It was hard for me to even play her as many people wanted to play her as a, new character on day one, and I was kind of wrong to assume that she'd be overshadowed, because when I did get to play her, she was genuinely really fun, yet also challenging. She kind of reminds me of Hawkeye in a way, as she requires really good aim and accuracy, but unlike him, her damage range really seems to have a large fall off. From playing with her, she reminds me of Wolverine and Psylocke, as you do want to play offensively, but you also need to learn how to pick your battles, because if you try and be out in the open like a tank, then you're just going to kind of feed kills. But if you try and play too back, like too far back near your supports, you're not going to really get any damage done. The highlight of her kit for me is definitely her movement. With her Helix Advance and her Ruthless Pursuit, it almost feels like you can glide around the map effortlessly, like a mix of Luna Snow and Spider-Man. It makes her playstyle very fluid. In a way, she reminds me of pre-nerf Gambit with how quickly she can get around and how many situations I was able to just get out of by using her movement. Her passive also makes her movement even crazier, as the more eliminations you get and the more you use her snare, it reduces her Helix Advance cooldown, and at one point I was using that ability for what seemed like every 2 seconds. There were a few games where I was able to get myself pretty much from point A to point B without issue. I was able to stall point, and a few times I was able to escape and get back to my team to regroup. Her damage is another highlight of her kit. She's definitely not strong enough to be considered broken, but there's no way she can be considered weak. You do, like I said, need to know how to play her and what position to play her in, but at the same time, you can kind of play her any way you want, you just can't play her as a sniper character. She definitely belongs more towards the front line, but not as far front as tanks. And if you're just playing her with your supports, unless you're just constantly trying to peel and protect your backline, then you're kind of just wasting a slot on your team. In my games, my biggest counters were probably Spider-Man, as most of the characters that I do play, he counters me anyway. And then Thing, he was another big counter for me, and really a character that I struggled against. It could just be a me thing, but with his anti-movement and his, I believe it's called Earthbound, he basically takes away any, chance you have to escape. Shield tanks were also another big problem for me. It's possible that just because I don't really know how to play her to her best extent yet, that they are an issue. I was able to catch a couple Magnetos off guard and a Doctor Strange here and there, but most of the time, if we were engaged in a 1v1, it either became a stalemate or I just retreated because I didn't want to waste my time and I'd rather get back to my team. Who I think she really does well against is probably Punisher. He's definitely the easiest character that I went up against, just because most of the Punishers that you see, unless they're like a top 500, which I don't really know if they play him in the top meta, he's kind of just easily counterable. Most Punishers just rely too much on their turret, and she can just kind of glide around to the back and just pick him off the turret. Rocket is another character that can be with his movement, but because he doesn't have a lot of back damage and a way to get out if his movement is on cooldown, he just becomes almost like a standing target. Gambit, like, maybe if he was pre-nerf with all of his self-heal, he would be a bigger issue. But because they nerfed him down and they also increased his cooldowns on his dashes, he's just kind of a character that you can... That's one of the characters that I would only suggest chasing down, because you can kind of just destroy him anyway unless he has backup. I'm maybe calling it early, but I would say that Elsa probably has one of the best designed kits in the game. She's just really balanced. She feels really decent. and there's nothing that they need an overwhelming change. There are a couple of things that I really don't like, and it's probably just a personal problem, mainly because I'm not used to playing a character such as her, and my aim isn't the greatest. But her living bullet is something that I really struggled to get out of really good value out of. The idea for it is there, and with its bonus health and everything else that it gives, it's a really cool idea. I really like the work they put into her kit with making her a monster hunter while also working with monsters. But I feel like maybe you could use a tune-up, or there's just something that needs to be changed about it. I'm not really sure what it is. I just ended up not really using it as much as I thought I would. The same thing is with her snare. Again, I get the point, but it just doesn't seem like it's worth using over anything else. In the coming days when I play with her, and maybe at the end of the season, we can do another recap on her character, and it could change. I could really like the living bullet and her snare, but for right now, I just kind of feel like they're more placeholder abilities rather than actual useful ones. That could change. Like I said, I didn't have the most amount of time I wanted to play with her character. I have like a little over an hour. But the last thing that I really have any complaints about is probably her ultimate. The idea is cool. I really like the fact that you can also pull back enemies, which I'm sure once I master it, and I'm sure other people will, it could really lead you into really good clips. But I find it difficult to really land it, and it's purely a me thing. I'm just getting used to it, and I'm glad the devs aren't copy-pasting other ults, because they could have just really copy and pasted Squirrel Girls, but I feel like it would have been lame. Overall, I think Elsa really makes a strong addition to the roster. In the coming days, as people really learn how to play her, myself included, I feel like she has a really big potential to be a really huge threat and competitive with her damage and her movement. And honestly, the hardest thing about her, I would say, is just being accurate, landing your shots, but that's mostly every character in this game. You know, if you're not able to hit your shots, you're not going to see any value out of the character. That's why, like now, if I can learn her, maybe that'll change. I'm really excited to see how I can learn her and how other people learn her and to see what she can do. I'm interested to know what you guys think. Do you think Elsa deserved a spot on the roster, or do you think she should have been shelved? I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, why'd they add her over Cyclops or anyone? But let's put it this way. If they're willing to be this creative with a character that's not super well known, I cannot wait to see what they do with other characters. For now, let's just see what we can do with her. We have a whole, rest of the season with competitive. There's a new tournament announced. There's a bunch of new content coming. So honestly, I'm excited to see what happens at the end of the season with her. Maybe she'll get a nerf. Maybe she'll get a buff. I feel like if they're going to buff her, the only buffs that she should really get, maybe to the living bullet and the snare. But if she doesn't and she remains unchanged, she's going to be a solid character for the roster, and I feel like she's going to be one of those characters that might be recommended to newer players. But at the end of the day, that's going to be it for me, and we'll see how things change over the season. If you like this video, leave a like, share, comment.